Going to be a trilogue, and spearheading this trilogue, we have with us Paroma Chatterjee, the CEO, Revolut India. And let me please invite Paroma on the dais. And joining her, may I also please invite Shri Amitabh Khandelwal, General Manager, Reserve Bank of India, to please come on stage. And may I further invite Rishi Chhabra, Managing Director and Country Head, FiServ India. Can we have a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? Let's bring that energy back in the air and let's gather those insights from all of our speakers here. A very interesting trialogue spearheaded by Paroma Chatterjee. So Paroma, I'm going to hand it over to you then.
Thank you. Is the hall filled up or are we expecting more people? No worries, we can get started, shall we?
Yes, please.
So I think those of you who've been in the hall for the previous session, you had an exhilarating session from Nikhil Sawhney, the country head of MasterCard, on financially inclusive world. And we're going to take on from there. When you talk about financial inclusion, true financial inclusion is actually borderless financial inclusion. It includes people who are outside the borders of our own country as well. And that's the theme of our session, which we will be discussing for the next 20-25 minutes. A revolution in the making, how digital transformation is changing cross-border payments. Talking about revolution, I'm Paroma Chatterjee. I'm the CEO for Revolut in India. And we're building a seamless digital and borderless banking and payments platform, which has been successful in 39 countries globally, and now we're bringing it into India. With me, I have Shri Amitabh Khandelwal, who actually needs no introduction to a lot of people here. He is the General Manager for the Department of Payment and Settlement Systems, DPSS, that a lot of us keep engaging with at the RBI. And prior to that, he has been with the government of Chhattisgarh in institutional finance. So his 2+ decades in regulatory and policy making is highly enriching. And over to you, sir, if you want to add anything by way of introduction from your 2 decades in this space.
Thank you, Paroma, and warm good afternoon to all. It's not that warm though. Okay. So just, she has already summed up, and I think when you are working with a regulator, that itself becomes the introduction. So I am, personally, there is nothing more to add. Only thing is that I have been in this payment and settlement systems department for last 6 years. This is 6th year. So have been interacting with many of you, and right now we are working on cross-border things, so this seems to be very relevant to me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As the Honorable Governor of the RBI in his address yesterday, Mr. Shaktikanta Das said, the regulator says some things and leaves a lot of things unsaid for us to hear. So we look forward to both the said and unsaid things from you, especially when it comes to cross-border payments in this session. And on my right is Rishi Chhabra. He is the MD and country head of FiServ. He brings with him rich experience in the payments and financial services space globally in the US and in other countries. And with that, Rishi, over to you to add a bit by way of introducing yourself as well.
Thank you, Paroma. Appreciate the warm welcome. Great to be here. We are sorry, guys. We are between some of you and lunch, so apologies for that. But it's great to be here. FiServ, as some of you may know, we operate in 100+ countries, right? And cross-border payments is very near and dear to our heart. We try and solve this problem in many, many countries. And Paroma, will be interesting as we speak, right? The problem is common. It's not limited to India. It is very, very common globally, right? And Latin America, Europe, APAC, we can keep speaking about it, but it's a very challenging problem that we have globally today. It's a great topic that we're going to spend some time on it. So again, thank you for having me here.
Great to have you, Rishi. So as we begin, I want to just set the context with the current landscape of cross-border remittances in India. How many of you know how much outward remittances we do? Last year, we did $19.6 billion worth of outward remittances from India. And do you know how much we do as inward remittances? $83 billion. So the 83 plus 19, close to 20, $103 billion worth of remittances outwards and inwards put together makes India one of the largest global markets for remittances. Not just that, since 2016, for the last 7 years or so, this market has been growing at a rate of 8% CAGR, year on year. And if you look at specifically just the last year, there has been a surge, particularly in outward remittances, which has grown by 61% in the last 1 year itself. That's the amount of volume of remittances that happens across the border, with a lot of Indian diaspora living abroad, sending money home, as well as a lot of Indian students going for education abroad, going for health, medical reasons abroad, and a lot of money flowing across the borders both ways and growing rapidly. In that context, the four main problems, as we have seen, are: one, the problem of cost. To be able to seamlessly transfer money in and out of borders at the least cost possible. The second is security, to ensure the transactions are secure as they cross the border. The third is time, the sheer time that it takes to send money and for the recipient to receive it, especially in time-sensitive situations. And fourth is transparency, for somebody to actually keep track of their money as it is crossing the borders. Now, with those problem statements, and here I would invite Shri Amitabh to share his thoughts on how are you as a regulator looking at these problems that the Indian consumers and the diaspora face, and what are your thoughts on the kind of solutions that you can think of which would enable solving these problems and making both inward and outward remittances more seamless?
I think you have summed up all those four issues which are associated with cross-border transaction. And cost as such is very important for us. As Paroma was telling that the volume of remittances that we do, inward and outward. And as per a 2021 report of World Bank, now it's $89 billion is what the inward remittance was there for India. So just think of a scenario where you are spending, say, 10% of that as cost. So almost 9-10 billion is what the Indians sitting outside, they spent on sending money to India. And if we can halve it, we will save 5 billion. And that is huge. So definitely there is a case for looking at this aspect, not only from the charges perspective, but also, as yesterday also there was the one point which was coming up from the talks of all the speakers is that we are the world leader as far as the payment system is concerned. So we consider payment system to be a public good infrastructure, and that should not be limited only to India. Having done all these things, good work domestically, it's time to take it globally. Not only for our own people, but also for other people. So what we are doing as of now is that we have many countries which are having fast payment system in place. We have UPI, everyone knows that. So we are working on interlinking those fast payment systems so that the other issues that Paroma was telling that are also taken care of instantly. So she was talking about transparency, like where my fund is. So that question will be there only for 2 minutes. In 2 minutes, the sender will know that fund has reached. So that will take care of many aspects, many of the risks which are there, say the forex risk or the settlement risk and all those things. So we are working on instant payment, and that is the way to go today. With Singapore, we have already announced, it's publicly announced that we will be interlinking it, and very soon we will see the first transaction also there. We are in talks with other jurisdiction also, and hopefully by next year we will have many more such arrangement wherein the Indians can send and receive money over the fast payment systems.
Well put, sir. You spoke about how we're enabling a lot on the inward rails, and even cross-border UPI was launched yesterday, as a matter of fact. And you spoke about reducing the costs, where the 10%, if it comes down to 5%, obviously it's $5 billion saved for the Indian consumers. Coming to outward remittances, sir, do you actually think that the digital companies, by bringing in a transformative way of sending abroad, can solve both of these problems of cost by offloading the entire infrastructure of physical branches, paperwork, etc., and digitizing that to eliminate the costs in the first place, to make it sustainable for both the consumers and the processors? Any thoughts on that outward topic?
Yeah, definitely for consumers, as I told, that it will be beneficial because this will bring the charges down, and also the transaction will be instant. And it can be done as seamlessly as a domestic transaction. It will be like you open any UPI app and just make a transaction as we do as of now for domestic purpose. Obviously, it will take care of that. But your other issue is mainly, if I get, you were telling that the regulator says something, and without saying also they convey something. That is what I think you are conveying. Without saying in a straight thing, she wanted to know that what about the processors? How their paperwork and their regulatory requirements can be met. So definitely we are looking after that also. And the technology, as you are telling, technology is something that can take care of this also. And till few, maybe 1 or 2 years back, no one has thought that there can be instant fast payment based system with all the KYC check, all the screenings, all AML checks being done on the go. We are working on that system. Right now, when we are working with Singapore, we don't have fully convertible currency, so there are restrictions. We are taking care of all those requirements, whether it's screening, whether it's the limits, and this will make the life of even the processors also very easy, the banks, the other participants, the other stakeholders. So we are working on that.
Thank you, sir. So would it be fair to collectively say that it's our ambition that the way we seamlessly send money to another person in India instantaneously, we would hopefully soon be able to enable sending money to anybody abroad with the same degree of seamless ease and experience? But on that, it's not that simple. If you think about it, it's also subject to technological readiness at different points, right? The country of destination, the origin country, and all the jurisdictions that the money flows through in the process. On this, from your experience, Rishi, in various countries, how would you think it's best to collaborate and leverage the infrastructure that is available in various countries to offer customers what comes across as a unified, seamless experience as money changes borders and changes hands from its origin country to its destination country?
Yeah, great question, Paroma. And Charles Darwin once said that the strongest wouldn't survive, the intelligent wouldn't survive, but the one who's most flexible to change is going to survive. And I think what we're seeing is stuff is changing on a regular basis, right? Nothing is permanent. The consumer needs have changed dramatically. Go back 10 years in time, right? Consumer was happy sending money from a bank account to a bank account, waiting for 4 days for the money to move, not okay, didn't know how much they're going to pay for it, what dollar rate or what euro rate the conversion would happen, right? Today, the consumer expects transparency at every step in the process, right? They want choices. Just in Asia Pacific, right? We have over 100 digital wallets that are enabled today from a payments perspective, right? If I'm a consumer in country X and I use one wallet, and I'm a consumer in country Y and I use another wallet, my expectation is my wallet should work for that transfer, right? So it's the problem statement is much bigger. I think our consumer needs have changed dramatically. I think ultimately to what all of you all said before, right? Technology is the key enabler. Countries, folks, systems, processes who can integrate the technology in the best possible way will be the winners, who understand the regulations in different countries, understand the compliance norms in different countries, the KYC norms, the AML norms, and so on and so forth. The good thing is in today's world, with real-time APIs, microservices, there are a lot of the information you can do in real time, which enables a lot of this. Historically, you couldn't do that, right? Historically, as I said, you were subjected to a transfer. I lived in the US for 20 plus years. If I had to transfer money 10 years ago, it would take me 4 days to transfer money. And that was the reality, and there were no options. Then you have other companies who came up with money options to move money. But even within those companies, they started with one currency or two currencies or three currencies or four, right? The key is to solve a lot of these corridors, not one corridor, right? And every corridor obviously has its own challenges. It's not easy at all. But I think all the innovation we have seen within India, outside of India, I think the problem is very well recognized, and everybody is focusing on this as a next big bet, that they have to go solve this problem, right? Just the way three of us is having this conversation, I'm guaranteeing you multiple such conversations are happening in the globe at the same time, right? I know companies I worked with who were just solving the US to Latin America challenge. Imagine Latin America has multitude of currencies, not easy, very big corridors, US to Mexico, US to Brazil, right? Trying to solve those corridors itself was a big, big challenge, right? So I think technology, advancement, adoption, infrastructure, being very assertive and understanding of the regulations in the original country, the destination country, and then obviously using the latest technologies is the key to move forward.
Very well put, and thanks for that perspective from different countries, Rishi. Yeah, you're right. Because of the kind of challenges that we've faced, even someone like me, like who's got cousins abroad, I would still think of doing a cross-border remittance only when it comes to a significant, life-changing, high-value transaction, like sending my kid to study in a college abroad, or if my parents, God forbid, had to be operated in a country abroad. But I don't think about just sending my nephew 10 pounds as a birthday gift, because it's not as seamless. So it hasn't got into your regular day-to-day life yet. But with India and the globe becoming a common place and India getting globalized, I think we need to evolve in that direction. And as you rightly put, Rishi, the countries that have the most flexible partnership between industry and regulators to make it happen will see the most seamless transition digitally.
Absolutely.
But there's another interesting angle to this, which you touched upon, Rishi, which is the compliance aspect. It's not just technology. There is another complexity, which is each country has its own AML KYC norms. It has its own data privacy rules. It has its own data localization norms. Any thoughts from you, sir, on how regulators and cross-border regulators can maybe partner to create a seamless way of creating common AML, KYC, or compliance rules, or localization guidelines, or privacy rules, so that these don't have to be customized country by country, but a more seamless way of managing the regulations?
Yeah, I do understand that these are pain points whenever we talk of cross-border remittances. From a practical perspective, I don't see that there can be a common ground where we can say that, okay, these standards will be applicable across the globe. I don't think that will be any time possible. We do interact with other central banks through CPMI or BIS and all those. We participate in the committees. And this is the common issue which comes up. But let me tell you that when it comes to sovereignty, all those things takes the back burner. Just take the example of what has happened in Russia with SWIFT. So that is where you have to live with the reality. You cannot simply, it can be a wish, but practically it is not possible to do away with that. And that is where we think that the UPI and PayNow linkages that we are working with Singapore, that will be an excellent example, because as I was telling that, both the countries are not having fully convertible currency. We, on our part, there are so many checks required. For Singapore, it's okay, it's easy. But still we are working on it and finding a way that how we can ease these transactions as also comply with the requirement. So this is where the technology will play a very important role. That will be totally API-driven systems that we are working on. And believe me, it will take care of the compliance requirements also.
Okay, understood. So in your view, uniformity of regulations or norms is still a little distant, but we can look to the those of our friends, your award-winning RegTech companies like Hyperverge Bureau, who won the awards yesterday, to look to you to create more seamless APIs and technology to be able to integrate the differences in the nuanced KYC, AML compliance norms across countries to make it easy for processors and consumers to avail of that. On that note, Rishi, any specific best-in-class examples that you may have from your experience that you could share with us and the larger audience here of where the industry, processors, regulator, and tech providers have come together to create what you would have seen as potentially the best cross-border customer experience?
Yeah, I think Europe tried to do this about 8-10 years ago, right? They created the single euro payments area where they wanted obviously banks, the financial institutions, the banks, the fintechs, all to work together to help seamlessly move money within the euro borders, right? It kind of worked because the currency they were solving for was one currency, right? So even though it was across countries, it kind of did the job, but it was in the back of one currency being the underlying factor, right? Again, in today's world, that problem is much bigger and deeper with the multi-currency world that we live in, right? The good thing is that our logistical and technological challenges have been solved in today's era, right? Shipping goods globally is no longer a problem, right? Somebody wanting something sitting in the US from India, not a problem anymore, right? So logistics has been solved, technology has come to the party. The challenge is, and I think what Sir said, right? How do you get some of the regulations across different countries to be similar? How do you get some of these norms to be similar? And multi-currency is always a much, much bigger challenge to solve than just single currency like euro. Again, all due respect to what was done there, good stuff done there, but I think the problem statement was much smaller at the time, what they solved for. I think if you think of Asia Pacific, even forget the US for a second, or you forget Europe for a second, if we just want to make sure we can solve this problem statement in Asia Pacific, we have to figure out the multi-currency transparency at the point of purchase, at the point of sale, to be extremely clear, extremely secure, extremely vigilant, and fast, as you said, right? And I think there are a lot of companies and fintechs like yours and others who are trying to work in this space, right? Who want to solve the problem because it's really a problem they want to solve. So I feel Asia Pacific is best suited to solve the problem because the customer experiences and demands are changing. Problem is well recognized, potential is well seen, and now I think all the sharp minds in this room beyond are working to solve that problem. It will take time. It'll be country by country, corridor by corridor, but I think the problem will get solved in years to come.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and we at Revolut have been doing this across Europe and have contributed to make cross-border transfers, at least across Europe, very, very seamless. And that is what has enabled us to get such a huge market share in that country as well. And now we are here to try and solve this area in India as well. But while you touched upon the fact about a common currency obviously being an enabler, the other thing that I wanted to ask you, sir, is how important or the role of a digital identity to enable this entire ecosystem. What would be your thoughts on that?
If we are talking of international means cross-border transaction, I don't think that digital identity plays that important role. Domestically, yeah, having a digital identity has helped us to leapfrog our payment systems, how we transfer funds from one account to other account. But you see, when we are talking about cross-border transaction, we simply require an identifier, nothing more than that. It can be anything. Like if we talk, again, I'm referring to UPI Pay Now project, then UPI VPA will be the identifier which the remitter from there will enter. Underlying how it is linked to the bank account, that is a totally different thing, and that resides domestically. Nothing to do with the cross-border transactions. The digital ID comes into effect only when, suppose we want to use Aadhaar as the identity for sending money from outside, or we want to use any such similar type of identity on the other side for that purpose. But ultimately, it can be anything. We do transfer cross-border transactions happens through bank account number and IFSC code also. So I don't see that it is so critical as far as cross-border transactions is concerned. Having rails and having an identifier is sufficient.
Okay,
Sorry, Paroma, I'll just add one thing to that, right? If you don't mind, which is unfortunately still the highest decline rates that we see of fraud rates are still in cross-border, right? There's a lot of mistrust in the system. Genuinely, whether it's in the banking side, acquiring side, there's just a lot of mistrust on that leg of the transaction, right? I think some of the challenges are like some other countries may not use a second factor authentication. OTP may not be something prevalent in some other country, right? Then how do you tap into address verification systems? How do you tap into geolocation systems in real time, right? That the person who's making the purchase, this is the address, it matches what address I have on the credit card statement on file, right? How are you making the checks in real time? So you kind of get away from a second factor authentication like OTP, but then you go using other methods, right? Because unfortunately, there's a bias that if it's an international transaction, fraud is very high, right? So systems are such tweaked that always the intent may not be that, but always the underlying result of that is that there's more fraud or there's more decline rates that typically happen in international transactions.
Got you. And with that, we're getting a beep saying time is up. I hope you all had something to take away from this little bit of engagement that we had. Do we have time to take any questions? Okay, I think, yeah, but I think we will be available outside for anybody who has any questions or anything to discuss with us. Feel free to connect and reach out. Thank you so much for all your attention and for being a very patient and understanding audience.